Dear friends, English literature, romantic poetry, selected poems of Percy B. Shelley, Adonis, brief questions with answers. Brief questions 1 to 63. Question 1. What is Adonis? Answer. Adonis is an elegy on the death of Keats written by Shelley. Question 2. What is the subtitle of Adonis? Answer. The subtitle of the poem is an elegy on the death of John Keats, author of Endymion, Hyperion, etc. Question 3. What is an elegy? Answer. An elegy is a poem or song written in honor of some deceased. It typically laments or mourns the death of the individual. Question 4. What is a pastoral elegy? Answer. The pastoral elegy is a poem about both death and idyllic rural life. Question 3. What is epigraph? Answer. Epigraph is a quotation placed before a book or chapter as a motto. Question 6. From where is the epigraph of Adonis taken? Answer. This is taken from the epigraph of Esther, often attributed to Plato, which Shelley had been translating at the time of John Keats' death. Question 7. Who is the morning star? Answer. Planet Venus appears as the morning star. Question 8. Who is Hesperus? Answer. In Greek mythology, Hesperus is the evening star, the planet Venus in the evening. Question 9. Who is Adonis? Answer. Adonis is the derivative of Adonis. In Greek mythology, Adonis was the handsome youth who was loved by Venus and slain by a wild boar. Question 10. Who does Shelley refer to as Adonis? Answer. Shelley refers to Keats as Adonis. Question 11. Who was Keats? Answer. Keats was a romantic poet. Question 12. Who, according to Shelley, was the cause of Keats' death? Answer. According to Shelley, an anonymous author of a scathing review of Keats' poem Endymion was the cause of Keats' death. Question 13. Who was the author of the scathing review of the Endymion? Answer. John Wilson Crooker was the author of the scathing review Endymion. Question 14. When did Keats die? Answer. John Keats died in Rome on February 23, 1821. Question 15. What was the real cause of Keats' death? Answer. He died of tuberculosis. Question 16. Where was Keats buried? Answer. He was buried in the Protestant cemetery in Rome. Question 17. For whom does Shelley weep? Answer. Shelley weeps for dead Adonis, that is John Keats. Question 18. What is the sad hour? Answer. The sad hour refers to the particular hour in which Keats died. Question 19. What figure of speech is used in the sad hour? Answer. Personification is used in the sad hour. Question 20. Then not the frost which binds so dear a head. Identify the figure of speech. Answer. Here, synecdoche is used. Here, head is used to represent Adonis, Keats as a whole. Question 21. What is synecdoche? Answer. Synecdoche is a figure of speech in which a part is made to represent the whole or vice versa. Question 22. How does Shelley depart from the original Adonis myth? Answer. Shelley differs from the original Adonis myth by two bold changes of name. The hero is not Adonis but Adonis, and the chief mourner is not Venus, Adonis' lover, but Urania, Adonis' mother. Question 23. Who is the mighty mother in Adonis? Answer. The mighty mother is Urania. Question 24. Who was Urania? Answer. Urania was, in Greek mythology, the muse of astronomy and the daughter of Zeus by Mnemosyne, and also a great granddaughter of Uranus. Question 25. Who were Echoes? Answer. Echoes are the celestial spirits who are the maids and companions of Urania. Question 26. Where was Urania when Adonis died? Answer. When Adonis died, his mother Urania was in her paradise, her region of ideal love and beauty. At the time, she was listening to the melodies sung by the celestial spirits sitting among them. Question 27. Why was Urania not beside Adonis when he died? Answer. Urania was not beside her son when he died because she was at that moment engaged in her own region of ideal love and beauty. Question 28. Who is the melancholy mother? Answer. Urania is the melancholy mother. Question 29. Who does melancholy mother represent? Answer. The melancholy mother represents those who loved kids. Question 30. Why does Shelley tell the mourners to keep quiet? Answer. Shelley tells the mourners to keep quiet because they will not come Adonis back by weeping. Question 31. What does Amorous Deep refer to? Answer. It refers to the underworld. It also may refer to Persephone. Question 32. Why will not Persephone restore Adonis to the earth? Answer. She is so full of love for Adonis that she will not restore him to earth. Question 33. Who is the most musical of mourners? Answer. Urania is the most musical of mourners. Question 34. Why is Urania called the most musical of mourners? Answer. As she is the incarnation of the spirit of poetry, she is called the most musical of mourners. Question 35. Who was the sire of an immortal strain? Answer. John Milton was the sire of an immortal strain. Question 36. Who was Milton? Answer. John Milton, 1608 to 1674, was an English poet who wrote the epic Paradise Lost. Question 37. Why was Milton called the sire of an immortal strain? Answer. As Milton was the first great English writer of epical poetry, he was called the sire of an immortal strain. Question 38. What is a sire? Answer. Sire means a father or inventor who was imitated by others. Question 39. Who was blind, old, and lonely? Answer. Milton was blind, old, and lonely. Question 40. What was Milton by religion? Answer. Milton was a Puritan. Question 41. What does Shelley refer to as the priest? Answer. Shelley refers to the Anglican Church as the priest. Question 42. What does Shelley refer to as the slave? Answer. Shelley refers to the royalists who were slaves to the King Charles I. Question 43. What is liberticide? Answer. It is a person who destroys liberty. Question 44. Who was the liberticide? Answer. Charles II was the liberticide. Question 45. Who were the three sons of light? Answer. Homer, Dante, and Milton are the three sons of light. Question 46. What does Shelley refer to as tapers in Adonis? Answer. By tapers, Shelley refers to the mediocre poetry of some minor poets. Question 47. Whom does Shelley call sons in Adonis? Answer. Some poets of genius are called sons in Adonis. Question 48. How is the fate of some great poets? Answer. Some great poets are unfortunate as they are forgotten by men. Question 49. Why are some poets lost in the prime of their lives? Answer. Some poets are lost in the prime of their lives because of the malicious criticism of man or of the cruel dispensation of gods. Question 50. How are the living poets trying to achieve fame? Answer. The living poets are trying to achieve fame, overcoming thorny paths of hostile criticism. Question 51. Who is the youngest son of Urania? Answer. Shelley calls Keats the youngest son of Urania. Question 52. Why does Shelley call Keats the youngest son of Urania? Answer. Shelley calls Keats the youngest son of Urania because Keats was the last poet in the barren period since the death of Milton. Question 53. How does Shelley compare Keats to a pale flower? Answer. Shelley compares Keats to a pale flower carefully nursed by a maiden who bathed with tears of love instead of dew. I repeat it. Who bathes it with tears of love instead of dew? Question 54. What does Shelley call the premature death of kids? Answer. He calls it waste. Question 55. Why does Shelley compare kids to a broken lily? Answer. The broken lily is a metaphor for something cut down at its prime. As Keats died at the prime of his life, Shelley compares him to a broken lily. Question 56. The broken lily lies. The storm is over, past. What does the storm refer to? Answer. The storm refers to the malicious criticism of Keats' Endymion. Question 57. When is the storm overpassed? Answer. The storm is overpassed with the death of Keats. Question 58. Which is the high capital? Answer. Rome is referred to as the high capital. Question 59. Where does death rule over? Answer. Death rules over things which are both beautiful and decaying. Question 60. Why is Rome described as the court of death? Answer. Rome is described as the court of death because it is full of artistic monuments which are decaying. Question 61. When did Keats come to Italy? Answer. He came to Italy in the autumn of 1820. Question 62. With what did Keats buy his grave in Rome? Answer. He bought his grave in exchange for his life. Question 63. Why is death described as white? Answer. Death is described as white because death causes decay and dissolution to the body. Thank you friends for watching my video.